guys are so quiet. Good evening, everyone. My name is Cassie Davis. I'm the Director of Events at Harvard Bookstore. And on behalf of Harvard Bookstore, the Harvard Division of Science, and the Harvard Library, I'm very pleased to welcome you to tonight's event with Mary Roach. This event is part of our Harvard Science Book Talk series, an ongoing collaboration between Harvard Bookstore, the Harvard Division of Science, and the Harvard Library, featuring talks by amazing authors of recently published books on a variety of science-related topics. We have a packed event schedule this fall. Visit us online at harvard.com to learn more about the series and who we're hosting next. Please take a moment to silence your cell phones and other electronic devices. If you haven't already, you can purchase copies of Mary Roach's new book, Replaceable You, at the table out in the hall. All of those books have been pre-signed. If you would like your book personalized, Mary is gonna do that at this table after the presentation. But please line up like this way and up this way so that people can exit this way. We'll go over that again at the end. We also have copies of her books, Bonk, Grunt, and Gulp, for sale in the lobby. After the presentation, we're going to take audience questions. This event is being recorded, so please wait for me to come around with a microphone. Don't shout from your seat. And lastly, thank you for buying books from Harvard Bookstore. Your purchases support our award-winning event series and helps ensure the future of a landmark independent bookstore. Now it's a privilege to introduce tonight's speakers. Mary Roach is the author of the New York Times bestseller, Stiff, Spook, Bonk, Gulp, Grunt, Fuzz, and Packing for Mars. She's written for National Geographic, Wired, and the New York Times Magazine. Her TED Talk made the TED 20 Most Watched list, and she's a finalist for the Royal Society's Winton Prize and a winner of the American Engineering Society's Journalism Award. Her new book, Replaceable You, Adventures in Human Anatomy, is a rollicking exploration of the quest to recreate the impossible complexities of human anatomy. The book came out a couple weeks ago and is another New York Times bestseller. Joining Roach in conversation tonight is award-winning science journalist Elizabeth Preston. Preston contributes regularly to the New York Times, and her new book, The Creature's Guide to Caring, will be publishing this spring. Now please join me in welcoming Mary Roach and Elizabeth Preston.
Thank you. Hello.
Hello.
Whoa.
I just finished this book, like many of you probably will soon, and it was a delight. And I wanted to say thank you for writing something delightful, because we could all use a little delight these days.
You're welcome.
And I wanted to start by asking you about the scene in the book that made me laugh the most in like an awkward, alone in public way, which had to do with the Great Dane. Do you remember?
Oh, yes.
Sewn to a person. So I wonder if you could tell people about this a little bit, and then also about how you choose which historical details and characters make it into the book.
Oh, yeah, of course. Yeah, thank you. I haven't talked about that particular bit of the book. It's a chapter that has to do with skin grafting. The title of the chapter is Gimme Some Skin. And I was talking about zoografting, Z-O-O, I think it's zo, not zoo grafting. But anyway, it's taking skin from other species and using it for grafting. And initially, there was the practice was done with leaving the graft intact, leaving it attached to its donor so that there would be a blood supply. And obviously, this posed a challenge with animals. The Charles Sédillot, who was a quite famous French physician in the 1800s, he did an experiment with, well, it was in French, and it said, un chien danois, and I thought, oh, Danish dog breeds. I'm not that familiar with Danish dog breeds, but I'm picturing a quite small one because it's going to be attached. But in fact, no, it was a Great Dane. And he complained about les mouvements continuels et excessifs. Like, what did you expect? That was the, and how do I just the image of the patient with, lying in bed with this Great Dane attached by this little isthmus of skin. How could I not put that in the book? It was such a vivid example of that era of zoografting. Yeah.
In the present day, not the historical weirdos with the dogs, you were at a lot of surgeries and a lot of, you had just amazing access in this book. You were in hospitals, you followed a doctor on rounds, you were in a lot of rooms with real patients, and I would love to hear about how you make those scenes happen and what kind of hoops you have to jump through to get into those rooms, because it adds so much to the book to see, the real people involved and the real stakes.
Sure, yeah. Well, I spend a lot of, especially early on in a book, I spend a lot of time sending out emails to people at universities and labs, et cetera, hospitals, saying, hello, you don't know me, this is what I do, this is what I'm hoping to do, I'm interested in such and such work, could I come and spend a day or two? And quite often there's no reply. And it's gotten a little, this book in particular was a little difficult because I was trying to get access to some biotech companies, and they're not famously welcoming to reporters. I'm not, am I a reporter? I don't know. Authors, word people. Their approach is a little bit closer to, here is a press kit and a video, make of it what you will. But they're a little more controlling. So it helps a lot if somebody's familiar with my work. And so it's almost a process of, I'm just going to keep going till I hit somebody who goes, oh yeah, I know you. That might work. But sometimes you go all the way to China. There's a chapter in the book that has to do with xenotransplantation, which is genetically editing pigs, is the species used, such that they're not as reactive if you use them for transplantation. And there are two companies here, United Therapeutics and eGenesis, who are both creating these organs. And I had lovely conversations. I was on a nice Zoom with the CEO, and then one of them ghosted me, and the other one just said, well, legal said no. So I contacted a researcher in China who's worked in this field for 30 years. And as it turned out, I feel like China was kind of a more fitting setting because there's no cultural tradition of organ donation. So there's a huge demand there for xenotransplants. So it all worked out, but I do spend an inordinate amount of time writing to strangers and pestering them, and I feel like persistence is pays off. I also I find that people don't like to say no 3 times. So if you just write back a 3rd time, it just and I think because it reads as enthusiasm. You don't want to wear them down to a stub and become somebody that they want to get a restraining order for. But if you although I tried at least 3 times with it. There was I wanted to do a chapter on uterus transplants, which I thought I had not heard of this procedure. It's interesting because it's a temporary transplant. So it would be removed after the child is born. And that way the person is not on an immunosuppressive regimen for their whole life. And I thought, well, that's really interesting. I never heard of that. But they're like, nope. So, it's very hard being me.
You said it helps when people are familiar with your work, but does it ever do the opposite? Are they I saw that book you wrote and it was silly, and this is serious.
You would think so. I mean, I fully anticipated after I wrote Stiff that no one would, that I would just be kind of blacklisted. I don't know why. I just, because I would could imagine somebody feeling, you didn't go deep enough into the work, or you didn't focus on the stuff that I find interesting, or you said I was wearing a jacket with elbow patches, and I don't own a jacket with elbow patches. That's actually a complaint that I had. I fabricated, I hallucinated the elbow patches. It was a tweed blazer.
It's a person with an elbow patch vibe.
Yeah, it was an elbow patch vibe, and my brain just supplied it, and I felt terrible. Poor man.
And once you get into these operating rooms and places like that, some of these situations people are in are not funny at all. They're very serious. You visited with these burn victims.
Yeah.
How do you, when you're writing, find the right balance in your tone to, entertain the reader, keep drawing them along, but, have good taste, be respectful to people's experiences?
Yeah, that's a great question. I don't always succeed. I mean, when I wrote Stiff, there was a case where I just didn't know how to make that work, how to walk that line. I had, in my book proposal, I had said I was going to talk to this person who, he was a forensics person specifically for plane crashes where there's no black box and you can't figure out what happened. Was there an explosion on board? Did the explosion happen after the plane hit? What happened? And the bodies of the passengers can provide really interesting clues. And but I was like, I can't, this is so dark, I can't make it match the rest of the book, and the families of those people might read the book, and my editor, after I turned it in, my editor said, so hey, where's that airplane crash chapter? And I explained to her, and she said, well, I think you should try anyway. So I did put it in, and it isn't a funny chapter, and some things are not funny. So yeah, and sometimes it's my editor just saying, this is beyond the beyond. I'll give you an example. You didn't ask for an example, but
Please.
I'm going to give you one anyway. It was from Bonk, which was a book about the study of sexual physiology, which wasn't done for a long, long time, and is most of it's been sort of figured out by now. But I found this researcher in Cairo who had published a lot of, if you go on PubMed and you look up Ahmed Shafiq, there's all these papers on the reflexes of sexual intercourse. And I was like, what is he talking about? And so I wrote to him and he said, yes, you can come here and I will demonstrate something for you. So I'm like, I'm going to Cairo, absolutely. And I got there and he said, well, the person or people, I'm not sure which it was, who I had arranged to do this demonstration, they're not here, but I will show you another reflex. And he had this guy come in, maybe a nurse at the hospital, and the guy turned around and he pulled his scrubs down, and Dr. Shafiq had one of those pointers, and he was like, I'm going to show you the anal wink, which is like if you scratch next to the anus, it winks, it does that. And so he demonstrated that for me, and it's sort of at eye level, and I went off on this thing about how, I don't know if you're familiar, anybody, with those sugar Easter eggs that you look through the little, it's a sugar egg, and you look through this opening that's like anus-sized, and inside, there's like bunnies and chicks inside, and I wrote about how I flashed on that and my editor just put a line through it. And she wrote, no. So sometimes I don't get that balance right. Yeah, I think that was an issue with this book and also with Grunt too. There were cases where it was really heavy and emotional and moving, and I feel like that makes a book richer, and you can have a mix of silliness and seriousness, so within one book. Because, yeah, humor and sensitivity are awkward bedfellows. You really got to watch your step, and I'm always tripping and falling down the stairs for that. I try, so thankfully I have an editor.
Yeah, I think that candy is now ruined for everybody who may know what it is, so
yes,
apologies.
And I'm sorry. I'm terribly sorry.
Were you worried that the guy who was demonstrating was just like a guy off the street?
Worried for his sake or mine?
Well, like, were you like, what's happening right now? Are these professionals or?
Well, I knew that he worked there, but I did feel that perhaps he was there under duress. Because Professor Shafiq was kind of like a god at that hospital. As a surgeon and as a professor, I mean, he was quite renowned there. So I got the sense that people don't say no to him, although the people who were supposed to demonstrate the reflexes of sexual intercourse, they did.
Yeah.
They did. Wisely. Took off.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, but I think that was the issue with the egg and that whole thing was more just out of respect for him. People, you feel bad for the guy, because he wasn't like, I'll demonstrate the anal wink, I'll do it, so yeah.
You do have some troubling comparisons to food.
I do?
In the book.
Ooh, like what?
During surgery
I'm sure
scenes.
I do.
There was, I think I wrote in the margins, Mary, no. When you compared somebody's back with the skin removed to a lasagna.
Oh, okay, well that's, but it, like the fat, never mind. Okay, all
Give me
right.
the gasps.
Okay, all right, never mind.
So I have to ask, is it possible to gross you out?
No. No, I don't think, I've been in some gross situations, but they're always, the sense of disgust or horror is, for me, anyway, let me add, for me, always outweighed by how interesting I find what I'm seeing and the person who's doing that work. I mean, the Body Farm, which I visited in University of Tennessee, the Body Farm is the nickname. I think it has some very, very dull name like the I don't know. I can't even remember anyway, the Body Farm. It's a place where the timeline of decay is studied so that in the case of a crime victim, a murder victim, you can better determine how long they've been there and thus when was the murder committed. So they look at environmental factors, and the day that I got there, there were some bodies in various states of decay. And that was tough because it's visual and also olfactory, and even at one point, the researcher said, if you put your ear really close, you can hear the maggots feeding, which also puts your nose in close proximity. But it was really interesting, the project that they were doing and the stages of decay and how those can be used and how they vary depending. I mean, it was just really, really interesting.
So that's a no.
Trust me.
That's a no. You cannot be grossed out because that's very disgusting.
I can. Because I knew the county medical examiner where I live, who made it a personal goal to gross me out. So, and she did one day succeed, and I'm not even gonna. She just said, "Oh, you should come in this morning. There's an interesting case." And I'm like, "Oh." So I did need to leave the room quickly.
We'll leave that to
yeah, but not anything for my books.
Okay, that's good.
And I don't need to describe that.
Yeah. Since we touched on this idea of horror, a lot of the material you cover could be horrific in another context, but you're writing about it in a funny context. And it reminded me that I have this kind of pet theory that there's a connection between comedy and horror, that they're related genres, because there's some authors who write both. So I think there must be some, like they're two sides of a coin somehow. And I wonder what the connection is. And I wonder if you have thought about this and what you think the connection is.
I think sometimes about taboo in humor, and I think that's close to horror, the things that people shy away from, either because culturally they should shy away or it just cuts too close to the bone. Like it's, and we are bodies, we are all bodies, and we all know, to learn about, horrific things happening to bodies is a disturbing thing, and I think humor diffuses tension, and so it's a bit of a coping mechanism. I remember when I was reporting Stiff, an anatomy professor who runs the anatomy lab at UCSF, I think it was him anyway, was telling me that historically medical students were encouraged to make jokes including at the expense of the cadaver as a way of coping, and it was thought to be healthy, not anymore. But people were, there's a whole coffee table book, I want to say, of postcards. People used to take photographs along with their cadaver, like prop it up with a cigarette, and just like unthinkable things, and then make holiday cards and send them out. It was a bizarre tradition that I think relates to trying to diffuse the discomfort and the fear and the sense of like, this will be me one day, that kind of thing.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Yeah, I wondered if the connection has something to do with discomfort and not letting your audience ever really get too comfortable as a writer.
Yeah, I mean, it's not a conscious thing that I'm doing. I don't really have a strategy or anything when I'm writing, but that makes a certain amount of sense, yeah. Yep.
So you went on a lot of really big, ambitious trips for this book, like to China, as you mentioned. And this is a little bit of a spoiler, but when you went to China to go see transgenic pigs, and then when you got there, you did not see transgenic pigs. And
I saw them, but they were on a video screen.
this to me was relatable,
Yeah.
because I haven't gone on a big trip like that, but even in smaller scale reporting trips, so often you get someplace and the thing you thought you were going to see and then describe in your
Yeah.
nice little scene in the book is not there.
Right.
So can you talk about how you pivot in that moment? Because if you've gone all the way to
Oh, yeah.
China,
Yeah,
you
yeah,
know, are
yeah.
you panicking? And what do you do when it starts to go sideways?
Sure, yeah. In that case, well, yeah, this was I was, for the chapter on xenotransplantation, there was a lot of coverage around, when I was starting this book, a lot of coverage focusing on the patients, obviously, the first xenotransplanted heart, kidney. So I was kind of curious about the pigs, and specifically because they're raised in a designated pathogen-free facility. It's a super clean pigsty, and that kind of contradiction in terms appealed to me, and so that's what I wanted to focus on. And of course, I was turned down here, so I went all the way to Chengdu, China, and it was like a 2.5-hour road trip to get out to the place where the facility is. And yeah, so we kind of pulled over at a certain point. There was nothing there, and I thought we'd had a flat tire or something. And then they pointed in the distance across a river. It was like there's like a moat protecting this thing. There's nothing. Like the government sanctions, no other livestock can be in the area. It's a lot of orange groves, so that which don't require a lot of tending. So there's not a lot of people around. And I was like, oh, so we're gonna cross that river somehow to get there? And they looked at me like, we're not. This is, a pathogen-free facility, and I, as a human being, am a walking pile of bacteria and fungus and who knows what viruses. So they're like, no. But we're not going to do that. So, but the control center was nearby, and that was interesting. And there was enough else going on in the chapter that it was possible to. I hope you'll be the judge. It was still an interesting chapter to me, but. I pulled in the history of why is it that we pick on pigs all the time? Why pigs? Why always pigs? And we don't need to go, it's in the book, but it has to do with a collaboration between the Mayo Institute, which was the research arm of the Mayo Clinic, and the Hormel Foundation, which is the research arm of pork. Those two got together and created sort of a miniature pig. Organs are the same size. They looked into, there's 3 volumes of comparisons of pig physiology to human physiology, renal function, and There was a study, orthodonture study. Somebody put braces on a pig. It's like 3 volumes of it. So yeah, I went off in that direction, as a section of the chapter, because I didn't have quite the scene. Although I was going to walk in like it's a pig. It wasn't going to be a really riveting. It's like, and there I was with the pigs that looked like pigs. And the thing is, it's a pig. They are pathogen-free as much as is possible, but it's still, you look on the video screen, and it's still a couple of pigs with some pig shit and some pig piss, because you can't edit in to a pig the ability to use a toilet. They're still going to
No one told
poop.
them it's pathogen-free.
Their poop was probably quite sterile because the food is irradiated and it's sterilized. And so anyway, but it's still a pig in a pig enclosure. So I'm not sure that the scene would have been gripping anyway. But but I think it's I'm often over-optimistic, too. Like, I think I have this image of what it's going to be when I get there. I remember pitching a story to Discover about the ergonomics of airplane seats. And there's this place where they have airplane seats, and they bring in people, and they, like, sit in the seat, and they study airplane ergonomics. And I'm like, so I can be a part of the study. I can go there, and I sold it to this magazine, and then I got there, and it's like, you're going to be sitting in this chair for 8 hours? And that's what it was. And I don't think it was my most interesting piece. But I don't know. I tend to get a little overexcited about the scenes that I'm going to go see sometimes. And other times it turns out to be so much more interesting and lively than you would ever expect. Because you don't know till you get there, right?
Do you find that just the act of going someplace tends to kind of create something for you to write about, even if it's not what you
Oh, sure.
envisioned?
Yeah. When I was working on Packing for Mars, NASA got kind of tired of me at a certain point, and there was a cadaver study that I really wanted to cover because Stiff, my first book, Stiff, had about cadaver research, and it did well. So I tried to throw a cadaver in every book whenever possible. So NASA was doing is back during it was in the Obama administration. No, it was before. Anyway. Yeah, it was right before Obama came in. We were going to go back to the moon. We were going to have a base on the moon, the Constellation program, and they were designing a capsule that the astronauts would travel in, and they were doing a splashdown test, and so it was kind of like they needed a crash test. And you can't use an automotive crash test dummy for that because it's a different kind of dynamic. It's, coming down, what if the waves hit it the wrong way, and et cetera. So they were going to do this cadaver experiment, and I thought, I need to cover that. And the Public Affairs Office was very, very uncomfortable with that. And kept saying, it's not, it's these people say no, those people say no. Finally, she said, Mary, it's not any one thing, it's just everything. So I contacted the guy at Ohio State University, who was the contractor, and he said, oh, Mary, just show up. So I showed up, and there were these 2 guys from NASA, Johnson Space Center, and they're like, oh, nice to meet you, and I introduced myself, and they literally ran down to where the cadaver was being wired up and instrumented and said to the students, or whoever they were that were doing the instrumentation, don't talk to her. And they ran into this office, and they called Public Affairs and said, Mary Roach is here. And the woman, Lynette Madison, I remember her name, she goes, God, just talk to her. So I've used that strategy quite a few times because even more than saying no 3 times, people don't want to turn you away when you've traveled a long way and paid for a hotel and you're there. So sometimes that's what you do.
That's a great tip. Just show up.
Just show up.
I'm here. What are you going to do? There is an amazing part of the book that I don't want to spoil too much, but where you do just show up in a very dramatic way to find out about somebody giving patients artificial penises that are made out of a finger. But you guys will have to read that.
Oh, yeah. I heard about, before I even started this book, I was talking with a woman who, she's in a stem cell lab, but somehow the conversation took a detour, and she mentioned she'd seen a paper by this surgeon who had reconstructed a penis using a man's own middle finger. And I, of course, being me, pictured the finger just taken as is with a nail and everything, and just installed like that. Obviously, that wasn't the case. But again, I get overexcited and I get over optimistic. I'm like, oh my God, what can you even, I don't even, like, the paper was in Russian. It was only an abstract, so I didn't have a lot of information. So I called my friend Stephanie, who I like to travel with in the summer sometimes. And I said, so, yeah, the Caucasus Mountains are supposed to be beautiful. And there's a guy who's building penises with fingers. So, and I had written emails in English, in Georgian, and in Russian, and gotten no response. So I showed up. I just showed up, and you can read about it in the book.
So you mentioned grunt, you mentioned bonk and stiff. And one thing I have always wondered about your books is about those one-word titles, which are kind of iconic.
Yeah.
But then you have other books like this, but others too, with not a one-word title. So I'm curious, do you always start out trying to arrive at a one-word title, and do you have somewhere like a whole brainstorm of failed single words for this book?
Oh, you know, I actually, the book before this which is about human-wildlife conflict, and it's called Fuzz, which is a play on fuzz, police, fuzz, animals. But I was so I really wanted my original title was Animal Vegetable Criminal. Oh. Yeah, right? So good, like a lot of syllables. And I was very excited about this title, and right around the time the book was going into production, Mark Bittman, the New York Times food writer, put out a book about the history of food called Animal Vegetable Junk. Which is not even a good play on animal vegetable mineral. And the feeling was, they're too close and they're coming out around the same time. So we changed the title. Fuzz was a second choice. And this one, I did think about one-word titles, but what, swap? I don't know.
Lasagna.
Lasagna. Swap kind of sounds thrupley. It sounds, or like swingers, I don't know. So, and it's a play on, and I don't know how many people even would get this, but it's a play on an old 20s song, Embraceable You. Yeah? Yeah? So yeah, some people know that. So I liked that. I like that title. Mm-hmm. But and then about 3/4 of the way through the research process, I saw that there, from 2004, I think, there was a book with that title, Replaceable You, and I was like, what do we do? But, you know, there were people arrive at the same title independently, and, you know, it was an academic, not that there's anything wrong with an academic press book, but it was like, it's not hugely known, that book, so it seemed like there was room for another. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I like fuzz.
I like fuzz too, but that slang for police, fuzz, I don't know how current that is, but.
I got it.
You got it, good. Oh, yeah, at least one person got it right here, yeah. No, I like, it's okay. It's okay, but it's no animal vegetable criminal.
Have you considered writing a memoir and calling it Roach?
Oh, you know, I consider writing an entire book about cockroaches just because it's my name. Maybe I will.
Were there other, as you were doing the research and the reporting for this book, I'm imagining that there were other body parts, you mentioned the uterus, that didn't make it into the final list of chapters. What were some of the other, I don't want to say body parts on the cutting room floor, but you know what I mean.
Well, there was the uterus. There was also the artificial placenta was an interesting, or bio bag. The idea being if it's a fetus that is too premature to survive, you can by keeping it in kind of an artificial womb, basically it's an artificial womb, could you buy a few more weeks time? And so this is, I thought that was fascinating. They were, I don't even think they replied. There was a very, and I'm not sure why, whether it had to do with some debate on the viability of a fetus outside the body and how that would relate to abortion. I don't know. They didn't respond. But I thought that was a really interesting project, and they've been doing studies with, I think it's lambs in this case, not pigs. Pigs got a break in this case. So that I thought was interesting. I did think about, there's this guy in Italy, Cannavaro, and his big thing is a full body transplant. In other words, you would take your head off and you would install it on a different body. So instead of replacing like 5 failing organs, you just install a brand new body. And there's obviously a lot of problems with this. And although in the 1970s, Robert White, a surgeon in Cleveland, with primates, actually did that. They didn't live very long, but he was able to hook up the blood supply, obviously not the spinal nerve, so they were paralyzed, as would be a human if Dr. Cannavaro had, your face right now is hilarious. Dr. Cannavaro, and I thought, God, I could go visit this guy, but okay, to give you an idea of Dr. Cannavaro, I got a footnote, which is a line from, he wrote a book. Sorry, this will take just a minute. Okay. Here's a line from, Cannavaro wrote a 2013 advice book for men. Here's a quote. "This book will tell you how to exploit the needs and weaknesses of women for your benefit, how to cajole them and lure them into your web." So that's, I don't need to show up there. Yeah, I'm going to leave him alone. I'll say his latest thing is that he said, well, I've kind of rethought the head transplant because you get this brand new young body and you're going to have this old withered face. So I think what we'll do instead, just the brain. You just like cut a hole in the back, install the brain. So that's, and it, you know, that's not in the book.
This sounds like a guy who today has an AI girlfriend.
Yeah, yes, I think so, for sure, yeah.
One of the body parts or procedures that did make it into the book, you have a chapter on ostomates, and I was curious how you arrived at the framing of that chapter, because it's not organized around new technologies so much as around the stigma of having had this procedure and what people are doing to address that. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, ostomy was. Yeah, it's interesting. Well, the whole idea of a stigma attached to not just ostomy, but that sense, that sort of bias we have for wanting things keeping the body whole, even when. To keep a part that's not working very well. I mean, you're actually more disabled as a whole than you would be with this replacement. So I thought that was kind of interesting in the context of amputation and artificial limbs, but also ostomy. And there's an organ.
Say what that is?
What?
Should we say what that is in case people don't know?
Oh, ostomy. Yeah, ostomy. It used to be done when there was a serious blockage. It's basically an artificial anus. It's an opening, and waste comes out. Sometimes it's up in the small intestine, sometimes further down. And so there's a pouch system that the person just, changes. So it's done sometimes with severe inflammatory bowel disease, sometimes for people who've had cancer. there's various reasons to do it. And of course, you know, it has a stigma, and that's very frustrating for people. And so, you know, there's not really any, like, I didn't know of any advanced technology. It's pretty much adhesive in a pouch. It's not and the surgery's actually been around since at least the early 1800s, and it came about because sometimes when somebody would say a stab wound or some kind of a wound to the torso, the gut would fuse to the skin, to the opening in the skin naturally. And so surgeons, I think there was a quote, why should we not take a hint from nature and actually, you know, create this artificial anus for somebody? And these were patients who they had such severe blockages that they would have died. So, and they were outfitted. In the early days of ostomy, there were no adhesive pouches. There was, in the case study that I read, a tin box that could be changed at pleasure. I'm like, okay, at pleasure might be a little bit of an overstatement. But anyway, I went to a 5K run for ostomates, which is the collective noun, ostomates. An ostomate being somebody who's had an ostomy. And it was a really fun event and just really interesting to talk to people. I mean, TikTok has actually helped a lot with erasing the stigma. There's people who just say, look, here's my bag and this is how I do it. It's like, it's like you change diapers, you change a tampon, you change whatever, you know, it becomes part of your life, and it's not, and you can only really look at it compared to what was your life like before you did this, and how horrible was that to be afraid to go out, to be afraid to be, you know, away from a bathroom. So, you know, the payoff is that you have your life back in a sense. Yeah.
Yeah, I thought that idea, which, like you said, is also in the amputation chapter, about people choosing to get rid of a body part that's not quite working, but that isn't technically, like, you know,
dead. Or septic or gangrenous, right?
Yeah,
exactly.
I thought that was really interesting. And the last thing I wanted to ask you about related to that is, you know, the book is called Replaceable You, but you wrote that you realized kind of early on in the research process that your big takeaway was going to be, we're not replaceable, that the human body has really perfected all of these structures over millions of years of evolution.
Right.
So when you realized that, was that like, oh no, given the book title, or did you see right away, you know, how that was going to become your lens or your theme for the whole book?
I think the introduction and the concluding chapters are always the last thing I write, because I don't quite know what my takeaway will exactly be, but I did realize fairly early on, it seemed that the human body is such a miraculous machine, and to think that you could create any component of it as good as what we're born with. You can certainly, you know, if something is malfunctioning, you can come in with a replacement that's pretty good. But there was a point where I thought, now I need to change the title, because then there's no song Irreplaceable You or Unembraceable You. So, you know, you would lose that. So, it should technically be Irreplaceable You.
Great. Well, thank you so much for answering my questions. And I think
we should take questions from the audience. Sure.
Yeah.
If anybody has questions.
Hi, thank you for sharing. Sort of a question on the last note that you ended on. I started thinking, you know, the human body has like benefits and cons as well. Like there is a con to having a body. There's some joys, and then you get sick. And so were there like anything that you came across, and maybe they're in the book and maybe they're not, that you were like, maybe this would add to my life if I were to replace this part of myself with this new innovation that they're coming up with? Like, people have been talking about artificial wombs, or like, you know, like pregnancy is hard. I don't know. I'm just wondering if there was anything that you came across.
I didn't come across something where I felt like, well, unless it was a part of you that was not up to par, like not quite working right. Because I'm going to say there are people now with, interocular lenses, that technique is done so quickly and with so few side effects. There are people who are simply nearsighted who are like, just replace my lens, that they want that. But that's because they're nearsighted, you know what I mean? Or whatever their visual problem is. No, I didn't really find that there was something better than what you start out. Did you have something you were? Yeah, I thought maybe that I would. I mean, you read all these DARPA papers about if we could get people with gills so they could actually breathe underwater. I mean, there's all these, DARPA does a lot of thinking outside the box. And I remember when I was working on Grunt, I was like, oh my God, they've got some stuff. And there's like, no, it's just somebody wrote a paper going, wouldn't it be great if we could have humans with gills? Think how that we could like sneak in underwater without it. Anyway, no, I didn't actually find that. Yeah.
So I'd like to comment on your writing, and I'd like to ask you a question. So I'm a rehabilitation psychologist, and I have a much longer history than I'd like to count, interest in medical history. And one of the things that I have seen again and again is the stigma of illness, injury, and death, particularly within our culture. The phenomena of, God forbid we should talk about it because then it'll catch us, kind of like whatever. And it leaves people feeling very isolated. So I wanted to thank you because I'm a groupie, okay, I'll come clean. But, and the way that you present and the way your research is done and the way that you discuss it takes those things that people would normally treat like Voldemort, God forbid we should call him Voldemort, and it says, here, this is it.
It's part of life, yeah.
It's part of life, and let's not ostracize people.
Yes.
What I'd like to know is, because you've traveled so much, do you think that that is a Western issue? Do you find that other cultures are just much more accepting, talk about it more, and if so, is your experience different than, say, here in the States?
I guess because I haven't really spent, and thank you for what you said about my writing. I guess that I haven't spent enough time just talking to the average person. I haven't really lived in another culture other than England, and I think they're a little far behind us. So I can't name a country where I feel like, I think sometimes, in a place like India where you just see so much, people with disfigurements or things that haven't been treated, and but I don't think that's not what you're talking about.
Do you find it's more accepting in India?
It's just more there. And therefore more. I think anytime something is more open and present, and you see it all the time. One of the things about ostomy is that it's hidden, so it's just not. But if you look at what's happened with prosthetic limbs, from the days where people had those horrible flesh-colored kind of not very helpful prostheses, and now people are going around in shorts with a very techie-looking prosthetic, and it's nothing. Nobody thinks twice. There's no shame in it. So it's a process, and it's slower than it should be. Yeah. But I think that TikTok actually has helped a lot in that way, just because the huge numbers of people who watch TikTok videos and who do them. I think that has been a positive element of that. Yeah. Thank you.
Hi. I also wanted to say thank you for your writing. I'm a librarian and also a groupie, and I recommend your books all the time.
Oh, thank you. Librarian. Yay, librarian.
Thank you. My question, and maybe you address it in the book, so the answer is just read the book. Do you think there is a Ship of Theseus moment with the human body where you replace so many parts that you're no longer you?
Yeah, no. Maybe with the Dr. Cannavaro thing. I think maybe in that case, if everything from here down is someone else, that would sort of mess with you a little bit. And that might, yes. But other than that, no.
Hi, I'm also a groupie. So thank you very much for this talk.
No, thank you.
I wanted to ask you, I have all 8 of your books here. And I wanted to ask you if there's anything from one of the books or any of them or all of them that you sort of carry with you that you think about a lot that have kind of stuck with you. I'm an autopsy tech, so I think a lot about Stiff all the time. It's one of my favorite books. But I wanted to know if there's anything that has stuck out to you from any of your individual books that you really carry with you throughout?
I think Stiff, because it was my first book, and I kind of stepped into that world of cadaver research without ever having spent time with, other than a family member, I'd never been around a cadaver, and I do remember the first time I went, it was actually the San Francisco Mortuary College, and they were learning how to embalm somebody who'd had an autopsy, and it was like the whole cavity, scooped out as though they were going to put dip in there or something. It was like, whoa. And I believe a viscera bag was involved, and I was like, whoa, that image, and also the image, the head lab, which I went to shortly thereafter, those images stay with you, I think, but now they're like old friends. So I guess, you always remember your first, so. Thank you.
Hello, and thank you again for all of your writing. Do you employ or take advantage of any research or writing assistance? And if so, how do we apply?
Oh, I don't, because it's too much fun, and I just love doing the research myself. Occasionally, I hired somebody to go through Senate subcommittee hearing reports, because I don't even know how to work that Senate subcommittee database. Sometimes I will hire somebody for something very specific, or translation work, but the research, also I think I don't know what I'm looking for until I stumble onto it. I do research like this. I go to for Bonk, the sex one, I went to the basement of the UCSF Medical School Library. There's a whole wall of the Journal of Sexual Research, and I just went through the table of contents, like from 1950 through, just going, boring. Oh, sexual intercourse is a potential cure for intractable hiccups. Yes, that's what I was looking for. See, but I couldn't say to somebody, go find me a paper on sexual intercourse as a cure for hiccups, So I'd have to download my whole brain. I'd have to do a Dr. Cannavaro thing. But thank you.
Hello,
Hi.
I am a nurse, and speaking about organ donations, and that the need for organs is so high, and it really has such a profound impact on people's lives. Do you have any wise words you might be able to give us to encourage people for organ donation?
Oh, thank you. Yes. I wish that we in this country had an opt-out system rather than an opt-in. In parts of Europe, if you are in a situation where your organs would be helpful and they can recover them, you are presumed to want to donate, and you have to opt out. Whereas here, you're presumed to not want to donate, and you have to take the extra work to opt in. That'll be like a simple thing. I remember being in, reporting the xenotransplant chapter in China and just thinking, rather than genetically editing pigs and doing like, or chimeras or whatever it is. Wouldn't it be easier to just, it's like, this is China. Could Xi Jinping could just say like, hey, it's your patriotic duty. You must donate. Like, how hard is that? Just get people to donate. And I wish we had that system, but we don't. That's the one thing I do in Stiff, kind of make a pitch for, and I added a page just like, here's what you do if you want to donate organs. Do it, people, do it. Yeah. And I have a tissue donation chapter too. I was at a tissue recovery, which was fascinating. Yeah. Yep.
I think you do a really good job describing how bizarre a lot of academic research is and how narrow it can be, but then there's a bigger picture, right? I'm doing this really strange study at a head farm, but it's for like this bigger purpose.
Yes.
Have you thought at all about partnering with the Ig Nobel Prize Committee?
Yeah, I think they go through my book and kind of, they find a few things. Yeah. And I should be looking through. Yeah, so in that sense, we're aware of each other. And what's his name? The guy who does the Ig Nobel. Yeah, Abramson. Abramson? Yeah, Abrams. Anyway, we know each other. Yeah. Thank you. But yeah, there is a and the Ig Nobel is great because I think it's, initially I thought, are people, do they feel embarrassed that they've been singled out? But no, it is actually this honor because, it's a really specific, weird thing, but here's why it's important. Yeah, so it's a great award. It's a great program, yeah.
Hi there.
Hi.
To what she was saying about sort of enhancing the human, there are a few examples of that, but people who can get an extra thumb, and it's very useful.
An extra what?
Thumb.
Oh, so they have three thumbs?
Yeah, there's a prosthesis, and they have 6,
Wait, so
fingers.
they have 3 thumbs?
6.
6 thumbs?
Well, 6 fingers, 1 extra thumb. So 2 thumbs in one hand.
Who's doing this?
Well, no, but it's a prosthesis. It's not an implanted organ.
Oh,
so, and it's
a strap-on.
Yeah, pretty much. So that's an example, and people can be much.
Wait. How is it?
Well, it's
attached?
like a prosthesis in your hand.
Okay.
It's like a glove, and it functions like a robotic extra thumb.
Oh, it's a glove.
Well, it's not a glove. It's just an extra thumb.
Okay, and you're using it for
whatever you do. You're more agile.
Do you
dexterous.
have one?
I don't have one, unfortunately.
Oh. Damn, I was like,
I'm
you
a
could
surgeon,
whip it
so
out.
I wish I did because it would be helpful. But that's one example. Then the example of cyborgs, people who have actually chips in their bodies and they can turn the lights on by just swapping or stuff.
Yeah, okay. So, how hard is it to turn the light on?
Yeah. Well, and other things, and buy things, and there are some
they can buy. Okay. I know. I didn't include those people.
The other example I was thinking is this new thing about the enhanced Olympics. Have you heard of the enhanced Olympics?
No.
Olympic game. Oh yeah, this is very hot. So
the enhanced Olympics.
So, yes, basically Olympic Games for people who actually do steroids and drugs and things. And there's this movement.
Oh my God!
Yeah, and it's crazy. There's a Time article about 2 months ago about this, and you should read it. It's insane.
Wow! See, this happens every time I write a book. Somebody says something like that, and I'm like, God, where were you a year ago?
You need an assistant.
I need an assistant. Yes. Thank you. The thumb too. Okay, I'm still not entirely clear on what.
I don't know what I would do with an extra thumb.
How that.
I can open a jar already.
Do you have? But you have one?
No, I don't.
Oh, okay. Does anybody have an extra? Okay. All right. Interesting. See, the things you should have learned 2 years ago. Thank you.
Hi. Hello.
Where are you?
Sorry,
right there.
I'm right here.
Yeah.
I just have a question on how you go about this research. So you've mentioned like cold emailing,
Yep.
And just showing up. Early on in your career, I would assume that since you were less known, it might have been a little harder to do these things.
Yes.
How did you go about not only networking to access these kinds of academic spaces or whatnot, and what if you were just a normal, like, average person, like
Oh, that's hard to imagine.
How does one even achieve these things?
I find that, thank you for that question, and that was my position when I wrote my first book. And a greater percentage of people just didn't reply. So perseverance is important. And also just, in your initial email to somebody, just expressing your interest and enthusiasm for what they do, because I find that people, whether it's scientists or anyone really, people like to talk about their work, right? And their spouse and their kids don't want to hear about it. And so you come along and you're like, I read about this thing that you're doing and I find it really interesting and I'd like to learn more and I'd love to talk to you. I know you're busy. Is there some way? And I also offer now, I send them a book. I just try to make it appealing for them. But all you can do is just send out an email or on X or social media or LinkedIn, which hardly ever works. but just reaching out to people, and 1 in 7 times maybe you'll get something back, and then you're on your way. And once you've gone to the first place, the first when you're working on a book anyway, that person becomes a resource, and they know some project that's going on, like, oh, hey, you ought to talk to this person, and I will introduce you. I mean, that happens all the time. I'm reporting, for Grunt, I was reporting on, it had to do with rebuilding a urethra, and it was a surgery I was watching, and then the surgeon happened to casually say, oh, we're doing a wet run using cadavers on a penis transplant next month. I'm like, oh, hello. So you find out about things that way, and it sometimes takes a little while, but the more you do it, the easier it gets, I think. Yeah.
We have time for 2 more.
Hi, I was just wondering what your next book project is that you're working on.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for asking that. I don't know. And I am always looking for ideas, and not necessarily, I could be happy going down one rabbit hole instead of 17 for a book. Like, it doesn't have to even be science. So if you know of something that screams Mary Roach, my email address is maryroach1@gmail. So let me know. Let me know. I don't have the next. It gets harder for me. All the low-hanging Mary Roach fruit is picked, So we'll see. I don't think I'm quite ready for retirement.
Thanks for writing about such fascinating technologies and procedures. A lot of these are very, sounds like far-fetched and futuristic for most of commoners. But I'm curious to know, for you, at what point did you, if you had a moment where you realized, oh, this is way too far ahead of its time? I'm curious to know what that technology would be.
The researcher that I was speaking with in China mentioned something called chimerism, and that is, way off in the future. But people are working on it. I believe it's been done with rodents. So what that is you would genetically edit, say a pig. It's always a pig. You genetically edit it such that it's not going to grow a kidney, and then you introduce human pluripotent stem cells so that they'll go to that niche, and the pig will grow a human kidney. So now it's always been there in the pig, so the pig doesn't reject it. It's a human organ. You don't reject it. And the end point would be everybody has their own personal pig growing a bunch of replacement organs. So that's pretty out there. Because sometimes the cells don't, they're not just in the kidney, and like, what if they end up in the brain, and you have this pig with human intelligence? I mean, the places that could go are kind of bizarre. So I think that was one. Although apparently there's either a rat that grew a mouse kidney or vice versa. So it is. People are researching that. People are doing work toward that end, which is, I think that's my answer for you. That one's pretty weird. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you all.